So we talked a little bit about why, because of sexual reproduction, we are unlikely to find too much life in the universe that's not microbial. And we talked about how hyperintelligence is unlikely because it requires a very tight ecological niche. Where does that leave us? Now, I think even so, I think these are the two great filters. So the first great filter, which are both behind us. So one is developing gene mixing or sexual reproduction. The second is developing hyperintelligence. I think both filters are behind us. What's ahead? I'd be surprised if we become extinct because of an accident or an ecological catastrophe or something like that. I don't expect a great filter. But I think even with what we've said so far, I think there's probably a handful or less than 100, most likely, intelligent civilizations in the galaxy. It's possible that we're early, because if you're estimating something to be a handful and you already know that you're kind of early, well, maybe you are. Maybe there's going to be a handful of them later. So maybe we are indeed the first. So the numbers could be small enough that we could be just one of the 5 or 10 that will arise, and that's a very logical, that's a reasonable thing to imagine. But even assuming that they're already here, and there's maybe like 5 or 10 or 100 super intelligent species, why don't we see any of them? I think we're looking for flying cars. So I think we have a tendency to extrapolate the future based on our current technology. We misjudge what kinds of technologies and what kind of motivations we humans might have about the future. It's possible that we're misjudging again, and this idea that we would see galaxy-spanning civilizations that conquer hundreds of star systems, and they have warp gates or, massive beacons or whatever, Dyson spheres, big technological interventions in the galaxy that we would actually see, or that they would send ships here and explore and contact us, and all of that may be just bad expectations. I think it's much more likely that the galaxy is much more. I think Arthur C. Clarke's The City and the Stars is a much kind of more likely explanation of our future than Ian Banks' culture. So I think it's fairly. I can imagine a future of humanity which is very, very technological, but kind of restrained. So. Maybe we develop all kinds of technology, but maybe we never leave the solar system, or we don't go very far. The distances are vast. In all likelihood, we're not going to develop interstellar travel. I would be surprised if we develop interstellar travel. So it's certainly possible to go all over the galaxy, but slowly. And so the science fiction expectation that we would have starships and hop on the starship and go to another star and another place and have an adventure and then come back and then go again and then a battle or something. So this expectation, I think, is not realistic at all. What might be realistic is we might have indeed a spacefaring culture. We might have ships in which humans live, either in our solar system or to the stars, but they would go there slowly. So it would be a society, it would set off, it would spend thousands of years traveling between stars, and then it would find another star and do something. The obvious question is why? Why would anyone do that? Because if the distances are so vast, you're not going to have a galaxy-spanning civilization. Even light-speed communication is going to take thousands of years. So it's not going to be very interesting either to go. You could go. Humans could easily become immortal. the ships could go in hundreds or thousands of years, but why? Why would you go back and forth? And why, even if you communicated and the signals came with a, tens of years lag between different worlds, what good would that do in terms of a shared civilization? I think life is very likely to spread, but it's not going to be like in science fiction. It's not even going to be in even like that science fiction, which is like Age of Sail, and you get like, you have required days to cross the galaxy. No, it's not going to do that. It's going to require tens or hundreds of years or millennia, and therefore our expectations are not grounded. The expectations are very unrealistic, I think. So, as an aside, the people who expect that we would go and have space adventures and colonize other planets and other galaxies, they tend to be Americans. So they tend to be from a culture whose origin story is that some brave humans have left their world and through some danger they went to the new world and they found some somewhat hospitable but wild place, and they colonized it, they tamed it, and they made their life there, and then it was they were richly rewarded with this new place that they discovered. Nobody else has this myth because, North America, even though I don't know what numbers of early nations Americans were there, but it was a much smaller population. So it was rare to find a patch of Earth that was ecologically hospitable, temperate climate with low population. Other cultures, you don't hear the British or the Chinese saying that they would go to other planets and colonize them, because the British colonized other places that had people. They invaded them, and the Chinese are mostly like they don't have the illusion of, they don't have an origin story about going to some allegedly empty place and making a new start. So I think this part of our expectation is, bad politics, bad fiction, bad politics. The other part is simply bad physics. That, as I said, it's unlikely that we would have any kind of interactive relationship with the galaxy. We could expand in it, but it would be slow. So it would not be a galaxy-spanning civilization. It would be more like Panspermia. I can perfectly imagine, and I would support, setting up Earth life in some kind of slow-moving ships, perhaps automated, perhaps with people, going around, spreading life around the galaxy wherever there isn't. In some places it would take hold, it would evolve completely differently, a completely unrelated, it would be technically related, but a completely divergent line of evolution would be followed in each area, in each star system, in each planet. You would end up, either that's already the case, or we could arrange to have a galaxy teeming with life and variety and potentially many cultures and many sort of cute animals and whatever counts in their world as cute animals. That is very likely. What's very unlikely is to have any kind of galactic culture. So I think Panspermia and not galaxy-spanning civilization. I think if we get visited by aliens, it would look like Oumuamua, the sort of object that passed through the solar system. I think that object is it's consistent with being a piece of technology from another civilization. It's also consistent with being a rock, and the prior is much higher, so it's probably a rock. But if you ask, like, what would the alien ships look like, they would look like essentially projectiles with instruments. They would cross, they would come at great speed. They would go right through our solar system on their way. Thousands or hundreds of millions of years would pass, and they would presumably retrace the orbit around the galaxy, and they would they would eventually come back to the culture that produced them, and they would say, hey, we found this and this. Oh, we passed this solar system, and there were some radio waves, and here we recorded some. There seemed to be some. We detected something there, and that's the sort of contact or exploration that I would expect to happen, and the sort of aliens that might come to us, and also what we might send to someone else, because what we are likely to send to Alpha Centauri or something is some device that either whizzes through the system and then beams back whatever detected, or very, very slowly orbits that star and comes back in like hundreds of thousands of years. And that I think is a much more plausible, much more realistic future. So a future, and it's not bad. It's a future that is different from what we're told by science fiction, different from what we expect, different from what we extrapolate from our Earth life, but it's not bad. I think a galaxy that is full of life, with enormous divergence of cultures, enormous variety of life forms, different varieties of intelligence, essentially isolated, evolving separately, is an amazing future. I mean, if we don't find life in the galaxy already, then we should spread it. We should be careful not to stomp on life that might already be there. That would be the only reason not to do it. But otherwise, we should do it, and maybe someone else is also doing it. The Earth will probably, the Sun and the Earth would be possible to exist for approximately another 4 or so billion years. There would be other stars for hundreds, tens of billions of years. I don't know how long. But there's plenty of time in the future, if we seed life in the galaxy, for it to evolve in all kinds of completely amazing ways and have enormous variety and an enormous amount of, if you want to think ethically, an enormous amount of good experience could be had by some unknown and unimaginable creatures that, either by themselves or with our help would evolve around the galaxy. I just don't expect to find Star Trek or Star Wars or the equivalent future of humanity. It's also, we also kind of imagine that the obvious thing for humans to do is to capture all the energy of the sun to make a Dyson sphere, and then all the energy of many stars and make some mega projects. And come on. I mean, we have enough ecological problems already. The idea of giant growth is wrong. There is giant growth, but it would be diverse. It would not be just a single intelligence with a single mindset, a single kind of creature harnessing unimaginable amounts of energy to propel the kind of psychology that it currently has. I think this is an extremely short-sighted, extremely selfish idea, and I think it's stupid. Also, finally, and maybe a little bit surprising, I think my prediction is that technologies of the future are not going to be that remarkable. I think we've started developing, or we've imagined, most technologies. And that may sound like, a way to embarrass yourself in 5 or 10 years. Bear with me. I think we misjudge what is important. So as I said, we were looking for flying cars. We completely didn't see, smartphones and internet and all that. So we definitely misjudge which technologies are going to be important, but we have a fairly good idea of what sort of problems or capabilities humans might want to have. So we think, okay, interstellar travel, probably not going to happen. Immortality, sure, we're already working on it. Changing your genes and your body and being whatever you like, and having like control over your biology, yes, already happening. Massive computation that's able to even simulate the experience of living. So you could have the experience of life inside a machine. We've already imagined it. We're already working on it. It's not a blue sky future. It's not yet within reach, but I don't think it would be a surprise. Similarly, perfect medicine, and better ways of harnessing energy, quantum computing, all of those are, we can probably imagine all the, if not specifically the technologies, at least the problems that are remaining to be solved. And we already have an idea how likely or unlikely they are. So it's not that we're going to have it's not that the future is going to come and, I think, completely surprise us, unless we got the physics wrong in interstellar travel. Is like, unless we have warp gates or something, or some form of, like, here's how my prediction so far could be completely wrong. We could have some kind of quantum one-time pad. So if you could send like entangled particles slowly to another part of the universe, then they would take thousands of years to get there, and then instantly you could quantum teleport yourself in some way by making destructive use of this mass of quantum particles that you sent out. Okay, in that case we could have a galaxy spanning culture. But in pretty much every other way, I think we have a fairly robust idea of the technologies that are in our future, and I think we're not going to be too... The future is here. We know what the future will contain. We don't know like when exactly. We don't know if we get the politics right and the social part and the psychology, but I don't think that the future will surprise us too much in terms of what will be there. And I think the future that I would like to see is mortal humans, not immortal, mortal humans who live in a galactic panspermia that maybe is Earth life or maybe it's some others, but it's essentially divergent. It's a galaxy full of life, but it's not human life. It's whatever it wants to be. And I think that would be amazing. Thank you.